Darius had poured his blood, sweat, and tears into securing his dream home in an upscale neighborhood. He cherished the tranquility of his well-maintained community, a sanctuary he had earned through relentless hard work. But recently, that peace had been shattered by something inexplicable. His Wi-Fi had been crawling at a snail's pace. At first, he dismissed it, chalking it up to too many devices hogging the bandwidth. But as the sluggishness persisted, he decided to investigate his router settings. What he discovered sent a chill down his spine. An unfamiliar device was leeching off his network. Furious, he changed the password, unaware that this simple act would unravel a web of deceit, crime, and entitlement far darker than he could have imagined. The next morning, as Darius sipped his coffee on the porch, his neighbor Karen Whitmore stormed onto his property like a hurricane. She didn't knock. She didn't ask. She just barged in, her perfectly coiffed blonde hair and designer outfit radiating an air of superiority. Her face was twisted with rage, and her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "Did you change your Wi-Fi password?" she snapped, arms folded, as if she had every right to demand an answer. Darius was stunned. He barely knew this woman, yet here she was, acting like he owed her something. "Yeah, I did," he replied calmly. "Why?" Karen's face turned crimson. "Because my internet stopped working. I've been using that connection for months, and now I can't do anything." Darius blinked, incredulous. "Wait, you've been stealing my Wi-Fi?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. Karen scoffed, as if the concept of theft didn't apply to her. "It's just the internet. You people always make a big deal out of nothing. It's not like it costs you anything extra." Darius took a deep breath, trying to keep his composure. "It's my Wi-Fi and I pay for it. I don't owe you access." That was the final straw for Karen. Her face contorted into a mask of pure rage. "Oh, I see what's going on," she sneered. "You don't belong in this neighborhood, and now you're trying to play games with the people who actually do. I'm calling the police." Before Darius could respond, Karen whipped out her phone and dialed 911. He listened in disbelief as she spun a web of lies, her voice dripping with fake panic. "There's a suspicious man in my neighborhood," she said, her tone trembling. "He's trying to hack into people's homes. He's harassing me right now. I feel threatened." Darius shook his head, watching as she smirked at him, confident in her manipulation. But Karen had no idea what was coming. As he stood there, waiting for the inevitable arrival of the police, he refused to panic. Instead, he decided to dig deeper. He walked back inside, sat at his desk, and pulled up his router's connection history. What he found made his blood run cold. At first, it was the usual browsing, streaming, nothing out of the ordinary. But as he scrolled further, the truth began to unravel. Karen hadn't just been stealing his Wi-Fi. She had been using it to access racist forums filled with hate speech, conspiracy theories, and calls for violence. She had spent hours posting venomous rants under anonymous usernames, doxing people she didn't like, and spreading hate. But that wasn't the worst of it. Buried in the data were encrypted transactions linked to fraudulent activities, online scams, stolen goods, and even traces of identity theft, credit card information, shady marketplaces, and worst of all, an attempt to access an illegal site flagged for child exploitation. Darius leaned back in his chair, his mind reeling. This woman, who had the audacity to call the police on him over a Wi-Fi password, was a criminal, and she had been using his network to hide her tracks. His jaw clenched as he saved screenshots and backed up the evidence onto a USB drive. Karen had spent years hiding behind her privilege, weaponizing the system whenever it suited her. But this time, she had picked the wrong person to mess with. The sound of sirens cut through the air, growing louder as a patrol car pulled up to his driveway. Two officers stepped out. Officer Jordan, a tall, composed black man, and Officer Miller, his shorter, stockier white partner. Karen, still standing in Darius's yard, immediately launched into her performance. "Officers, thank God you're here," she wailed, her voice shaking with fake distress. "That man," she pointed at Darius with a trembling hand, "he's been hacking into my devices. I think he's stealing personal information from the whole neighborhood. I don't feel safe. Officer Jordan narrowed his eyes. Ma'am, slow down. What exactly happened? Karen sucked in a shaky breath, putting on the performance of a lifetime. I was just sitting in my home, minding my own business, when my internet stopped working. I realized he must have hacked into my network. Then, when I confronted him, he got aggressive. He threatened me and refused to fix what he did. I knew I had to call you before he did something worse. Officer Miller glanced at Darius, who was standing calmly on his porch, arms crossed. He didn't look the least bit aggressive. In fact, he looked almost bored. Sir, Officer Jordan said, turning to Darius. What's your side of the story? Darius sighed and gestured toward Karen. This woman has been stealing my Wi-Fi for months. I changed my password this morning, and she showed up at my door demanding I give her access again. When I refused, she lost it and called you. Officer Jordan's face remained neutral, but Miller let out a short, skeptical chuckle. Wait, she called the police because you changed your own Wi-Fi password? Karen's head snapped toward Miller, her face twisting in anger. It's more than that. He's been hacking. He's probably doing illegal things online. You need to check his devices before it's too late. Officer Jordan took out his notepad. All right, let's slow down here. Karen, you're saying you believe Darius is hacking into your devices. Do you have any proof? Karen hesitated. Well, no, but... And Darius, Jordan continued, you're saying she's been using your internet without permission? Darius nodded. And I can prove it. Officer Jordan and Officer Miller exchanged a glance. Karen's story already had holes, and now the accused man was offering proof. Jordan gestured toward the house. All right, let's see what you've got. Karen's confident smirk faltered for the first time, a flicker of unease crossing her face. She had assumed the police would be on her side, as they always were. But this time, things weren't going the way she expected. Darius led the officers inside, heading straight to his computer. Karen followed reluctantly, standing near the doorway like a caged animal. Her bravado had dimmed, but she still clung to the hope that the situation would swing back in her favor. Darius plugged in his USB drive and pulled up the files he had saved. I took a look at my router's history, he explained, clicking through the logs. Karen's been using my Wi-Fi for a while, and the sites she's been visiting. Let's just say they're not exactly legal. Officer Jordan and Officer Miller leaned in as the screen displayed the evidence. There were multiple transactions linked to fraudulent websites, messages from extremist forums filled with racist rhetoric, and worst of all, an attempt to access an illegal website flagged for child exploitation. Officer Miller let out a low whistle. Jesus! Karen went pale. That's not mine. He's making this up, she shrieked. Darius didn't even turn to look at her. Karen, your IP address is right here. You were using my connection, remember? That means everything you did online was logged under my network. Officer Jordan folded his arms. So let me get this straight. You've been piggybacking off his Wi-Fi without permission, and now you're saying he somehow fabricated all this. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. It's a setup. He's some kind of hacker. I told you he was dangerous. Darius finally turned to face her, a slow smirk forming. Karen, you called the cops on me, thinking I'd get in trouble. But all you did was bring them straight to your crimes. Officer Jordan exhaled through his nose, looking unimpressed. Karen, I have to say, this isn't looking good for you. Officer Miller nodded in agreement. Yeah, and you know what? I think we need to dig a little deeper into what else you've been doing. Karen's panic exploded into outright desperation. No, this isn't fair. He's the criminal. She lunged at Darius in a blind rage, her manicured nails aiming for his face. But before she could make contact, Officer Miller caught her wrist, twisting her arm behind her back. That's assault on top of everything else, he said coolly. Karen let out a strangled scream. You can't do this. I'm the victim. You don't understand. Officer Jordan took out his radio. Dispatch, we have a suspect in custody, requesting backup for further investigation. Karen's breath hitched. Suspect? No, wait. You don't understand. Darius crossed his arms, watching as reality crashed down on her. Oh, we understand just fine. For the first time in her life, Karen realized that her cries weren't going to save her. The weight of her situation finally crashed down on her. She was cornered, the officers weren't buying her story, and now they had real evidence against her. But instead of backing down, her desperation exploded into pure rage. You lying thug! She shrieked. Her face twisted in fury as she lunged at Darius. Darius barely flinched. He had expected this. But before she could even touch him, Officer Miller grabbed her by the arms, locking her in place. Are you out of your damn mind? He barked, tightening his grip as Karen struggled like a wild animal. But she didn't care anymore. All the years of privilege and entitlement, all the times she had weaponized her tears, meant nothing now. She had lost control and it showed. You think you're going to do this to me? She screamed, thrashing violently. I'm a white woman. You think anyone's going to believe him over me? Then, as if the situation couldn't get worse, she did the unthinkable. She turned to Officer Jordan, her eyes filled with pure hatred, and spat directly in his face. The room went dead silent. Even Officer Miller, who had been trying to restrain her gently, stiffened in shock. Darius, who had been standing with quiet amusement, felt his stomach turn. Officer Jordan wiped his face slowly, his jaw tightening. He had dealt with racism before, but this was something else. His hand hovered near his cuffs as he took a deep breath, steadying himself. Miller shook his head in disgust. Well, congratulations, Karen. You just turned a bad situation into the worst day of your life. Jordan didn't even look at her. He simply pulled out his handcuffs. Karen Whitmore, you're under arrest for assaulting an officer, cybercrime, and fraud. The moment those words left his mouth, Karen lost what little sanity she had left. No, you can't do this, she screeched, kicking wildly as Miller helped Jordan restrain her. I'm the victim. You can't do this to me. Darius watched as they hauled her outside, her shrieks piercing the air. Neighbors had gathered, watching the scene unfold with wide eyes. Some were filming, others were whispering. Get your hands off me, Karen wailed, twisting in their grip. He's the real criminal. I was just... Her words were cut off as Officer Jordan shut the patrol car door. Miller shook his head. She just never knew when to quit, huh? Darius chuckled. Nope, but I'd say she finally ran out of luck. Jordan let out a deep sigh, glancing toward Darius. You handled that better than most people would have. Darius shrugged. Honestly, I was just waiting for karma to do its thing. Jordan smirked. Well, looks like karma had some backup today. It didn't take long for the story to spread. By the next morning, Karen Whitmore's name was plastered all over the news. The headline was brutal. Asterisk, racist woman arrested after attacking black neighbor over Wi-Fi. Shocking cybercrime evidence found. Asterisk, the footage captured by nosy neighbors went viral. The way she screamed the moment she spat at Officer Jordan, the arrest, it was all there in crystal clear detail. And the internet devoured it. Karen was no longer just a neighborhood menace. She was now a national disgrace. But the humiliation didn't stop there. Within days, her HOA held an emergency meeting. The decision was unanimous. Karen Whitmore was officially banned from the neighborhood. Her house, once her prized possession, became a financial noose around her neck. With mounting legal fees and no support from the community, foreclosure was inevitable. Meanwhile, Darius finally got what he wanted. Peace. He sat on his porch one evening, sipping coffee, his Wi-Fi stronger than ever. No more leeching, no more harassment, no more Karen barging onto his property like she owned it. His phone buzzed with a message from a friend. Asterisk, bro, you're a legend. She really thought she could get away with that. Asterisk. Darius laughed, shaking his head. She thought she was untouchable. He muttered to himself. Guess she found out otherwise. As the sun dipped below the horizon, he took a deep breath, enjoying the quiet. Justice had been served, and for the first time in a long time it was a good day.